Well, this is an honor. I am sitting with Dr. Nick Gillespie, and now that sounds kind of impressive in and of itself. But the truth is, Nick is much more than a doctor. He's a leader. I've walked with Nick for years. We've been together, and he has taught me more than I can ever put into a podcast. But being able to watch Nick's life and watch him through struggle and watch him overcome and watch him succeed and the impact and influence that he has is quite amazing. As I said in the intro, of course, he's an incredibly skilled physician and incredible experience, not only here in our community, but across the Southeast, really across the country, and some of the work he's done previously. But all of that to say, that brilliant mind, it somehow he has convinced himself to really lead well. And so many times we see leaders who are brilliant and doctors who are brilliant, quite frankly, but have no bedside manner and certainly have no ability to lead people. What is unique about Dr. Nick Gillespie is that he is a leader of people. He loves people. He has a heart for people. It's amazing that to watch him and to see how loved he is in his practice. He has a practice out from where we are in North Alabama, kind of in rural Alabama, but he is loved by the people and cared for because he authentically loves and cares for them. So all of that to say, Dr. Nick, thank you for being with us today.
Well, good morning, Larry. And seeing ourselves on the video, we have been around together a long time, and
Yes.
and the video shows that.
It does. I try not to look. It reminds me of where I am. What is that? Self-denial. We're going to
Maybe
say.
so.
Oh well, it certainly has been a journey. And so today, on Crossing the Line, I want to take some time just to explore you and who you are and how you got to be who you are, if you will. So take us back, Nick, if you will. Let's learn a little bit about Dr. Nick Gillespie before he was Dr. Nick Gillespie. Let's go back to Nick the child, if we can, just to learn about your life. So go back to when you were a child and tell us where you grew up and kind of walk us through a day in the life of 8-year-old Nick, if you will.
Okay. Well, we already made the comment. I'm a little older than I was when we first met, and so my history goes back a while. So things were different then. I grew up on a sustenance farm, and what that means is if you grew what you ate, you pretty much wore what your mother made you, that kind of thing. And we ate well and we dressed well, and I learned very early on that what effort you were willing to put in, what you got back out of it was a reflection of that. It was that kind of a life. Now, it's societally, I guess you could, and people do think, well, that was a hard way to grow up. It was a wonderful way to grow up because yes, we did have common chores that we did that were perhaps mundane, but on the sustenance farm also you had to have plenty of ideas. If something broke, you fixed it. You didn't call the repairman.
Wow.
And we had plenty of time for fun too. A typical morning, I remember my wake-up call in the morning was the oven door opening and the biscuits going into the oven. And I think that sound was a little exaggerated. That was our alarm for the kids to, hey, the biscuits are going in the oven. And then I noticed Mom and Dad started talking a little louder after that. Mom and Dad would be up cooking breakfast, and we'd get up ready for the day. If it's summertime, of course, the sun would be up. In the wintertime, it was dark when we get up. Some of the older brothers, I was the last of 6.
Okay.
So I had siblings that were nearly in their 20s when I was born. So some of the older brothers and sisters, when I was a small child you were talking about, had chores in the morning to make go milk the cow or whatever. I had none. I got up and got some hugs and had a good breakfast. And then from then on, the day was whatever the day was. I mean, we could be in the cotton field, the cornfield, the garden, or nowhere. We could be at the swimming hole. We'd be doing whatever. I remember one story thinking about this, and we were together. Mom and Dad were the leaders.
Okay.
They were the authority, and we were under their authority. And people say, "What if your mom asked you to do this? What if you told her no?" Well, it never occurred to tell.
Right.
I told my mother no. They were the authority, So we did what they said, and we were in the cornfield one time. My brother Charles, who was more mischief, had more mischief in him than the rest of us, went to the house. I think he had to go use the restroom or something, and he was a long time coming back, long enough that I was really small, and I'm thinking like he's probably going to be in trouble. Because as that small kid with a lot of older siblings, I spent a lot of time going, I see what he did, and I don't want to do that. So
Right.
you're kind of learning,
Yeah.
learning from them. But those guys were also involved in problem solving during the day.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of problems coming up on the Sustenance farm, on the farm, and you solved them. Like I said, you didn't call it a repairman, you solved them.
Now you got to take us. Did he get in trouble? Did he not? Take us
I'm going
back.
to take you back there. Thank you. He didn't get in trouble, but here's what he did. When he came back to the field, and I'll remember it like it was yesterday, he had Dad's fishing rod. We also had fishing, hunting, that kind of stuff going on. So we had Dad's fishing rod. On the end of it, he had built a kite out of some sticks and newspaper, and he had tied Mom's underwear as the tail. And it was the funniest thing I'd ever seen. First, there was a kite. Where'd that come from? We didn't have a kite there. And so he had made a kite, and he brought that back. He was flying it as he came back to the field, and we all broke up. So he didn't get in trouble, and he gave us some levity, and that's just the kind of the way it was.
That's amazing.
We were there, we were supporting each other, and we needed that day, and Charles provided it for us. And at that time, I thought, that was pretty cool. I got a cool brother. One of these days, I'm going to grow up, make a kite, and fly some really big panties.
Yes, you had to be
just like Charles. Just like Charles. So that was in one of the days. Another problem that got solved, and I was learning from these things.
Sure.
Another problem that got solved was my mother was in charge of the garden, and she was very responsible with that. And she had what you might consider heirloom seeds. She had the seeds that she planted every year. She saved seeds and replanted them. Okay. That had been going on forever. These seeds were very predictable. Mm-hmm. She knew what she was going to get out of them. Well, all of a sudden, hybrids got invented. And I was a young kid, and I remember Dad coming in. He'd been to the feed and seed store, and he was talking about the hybrids and how the yield was better. And there's some questions back and forth about how this works, and there's some talks about genetics, which they didn't really understand, and I certainly didn't. Mm-hmm. But Mom decided to experiment, and so she planted some of the hybrids, right, along with her things that she knew was going to be good. Okay. The hybrids did great that year. I mean, the yield was very, very good. The watermelons, remember the watermelons and corn particularly, was very good. And she got what she expected out of her seeds. And so she did what she had always done. She collected seeds at the end of the season for planting next year. Well, the problem is the hybrids had crossed in. And so the next year, the garden was a disaster. And I saw my mother lament over that. There was some scurrying. We had to replant with hybrids. And something that had been dear to her all of her life, those heirloom seeds, were gone. Oh, my. So those were all gone. I saw her lament. And then I also saw her say, well, that's over with. Here's what it is from now on. Yeah. Let's pick up and go on. So she found some joy in that. And so from then on, it was brand new seeds every year, hybrid seeds.
So lessons learned on the farm. I mean, amazing that you had that opportunity. But you were the baby, at least in that generation. You were the baby, right?
Right.
But what type of work ethic was required of you, even though you were the youngest?
You said a moment ago, start when you're at 6. I went when you're 8. Things didn't really change much for me when I was 8. When you grew up in that environment, the other siblings were working. And when there became something that you could do, you sort of wanted to do it too. Okay. Maybe if your other siblings were playing ball, you would want to play ball. Well, this was different. Right. But it was still problem solving. It wasn't just mundane, repetitive activities. It was a lot of problem solving. It was fun. It was figuring out how to do things. And so as soon as you were old enough to do a task that you could be trusted with, you were allowed to do that task. You weren't made to do that task. Your hand wasn't put in a vice. They didn't hold your hand over the fire. I mean, you just naturally did that. Wow. And so consequently, it became evident that we needed someone to drive the tractor when I was about 6.
Okay.
And that became me. So I started driving when I was 6.
6 years old, you were driving a and it was
driving a
it was a
tractor.
privilege. It wasn't work.
Oh, it was wonderful. Dad showed me exactly what to do.
Yeah.
It was simple enough. I was never given a job that I didn't have the capabilities of doing. So it wasn't like something was going to be over my head. And they knew I could do that, and I did it. And it relieved my sister, who was having to drive the tractor plus pick the down row. The down row is the row that gets knocked down when you run over with the tractor. Somebody has to pick that, and she was having to be off and on the tractor.
Okay.
And so at the time, I was sitting in the wagon bed with them. I was with the family. And so it was kind of a move up for me to get to do something. And it was certainly less boring than what I was doing.
At 6 years
At
old,
6 years
let's
old.
say you started working on the farm.
Right. And so
Amazing.
a work ethic. We enjoyed work, and I enjoyed work. The thought that I might have to retire someday scares the dickens out of me.
Yeah.
I enjoy it.
Yeah, I can imagine, and that was ingrained in you early on. It's just part of who you are. But as you grew on that farm, and now let's say Nick is in his adolescent years, what was that like? What was it like?
It changed a lot.
Yeah.
It changed a lot, and the world changed a lot. Tell you this story about the farm. We also did migrant farm work. We went to Michigan and picked cherries during the summer.
How about that?
And my dad there's a beautiful farm. It was on a peninsula out in Lake Michigan. The farm it was absolutely gorgeous, and loved going up there. And my dad was the overseer for this farm. And so we got the crew together from all over the Southeast to go pick cherries. Well, I remember one summer, it was probably around 65. Dad made his phone calls, families like us, good, hardworking families, and said, here's the date we're going to be there. You're going to make it this year. Looking forward to seeing you. And these people like family with us. We'd spend time with them every year. And one after the other, they said, no, we can't come this year. They've started giving us a check. And so we can't work. If they do, they'll take the check away. And I remember my dad saying these words. He says, you're going to tell me that you would accept somebody giving you money rather than working for your money? And they said, well, they told us we have to do this or they'll take the money away. And the check comes year round. And although we make a lot of money when we're working, the check is more secure. And so I remember my dad hanging up the phone and looking at my mother. And I remember these words. He said, Esther, it's over. And he sobbed.
Wow.
That way of life, because of that particular thing in our history, was over.
It was over.
And so things changed on the farm too. My older brothers and sisters were gone. It got to where it was just me. And my mom started working public work, and my dad too. And so I did. And so at about the age of 12 or 13, I was driving to work.
Wow.
I worked at a local service station, which was also a grocery store.
Yeah.
And so I was cutting bologna and pumping gas and that kind of thing.
How about that?
And but then shortly after that, I got into broadcasting and started working at the local radio station.
As a teenager?
As a teenager.
Okay.
I got my license when I was just turned 16.
How about
Because as soon as I got my driver's license, me and about 5 other guys drove to Atlanta to the Gaslight building and took the test to get our license to go on the air. And I actually got on the air. So I was on the air for 4 or 5 years. During high school, I worked work ethic. I was having fun. I didn't work. I would turn on the radio station. I would be there at sunup, which in the summertime was pretty early. In wintertime, it was, it's not quite so early. Sunup, and I worked until 8 o'clock. And then another guy would come on and work for 8 hours. And then I would come back at 3 and work until sundown. So those are fairly long hours in the summertime, not so much in the wintertime. That was 5 days a week. But then I worked sunup until noon on Saturday and Sunday. So 7 days a week, 2 shifts a day at the radio station in high school, and had a blast.
All right. So we're going to ask you to do something, and we'll have a little fun. All
okay.
Right. We're going back now. You are in the radio station, and you are on the air. Give us your radio voice. Telling you this is Nick Gillespie with whatever the call letters you want to make up. Let us hear a sample of Nick, the radio broadcaster. What does it sound like?
Bill Randall 650, Dorothy, yes ma'am, and the Axel Wide Peppermint Endurance Company in the bashful Johnny C. Home of the Grand Old Conglomeration, Fanny Hill University, and the bathtub of the South. It's 7:30. You didn't expect that,
I
did you?
did not expect that. That is awesome. What, another talent.
That's not
I
the
didn't know
first
you
time
had.
I've been asked to do that.
Well, I'm sure. That's awesome. So you worked your way through doing those kinds of things as a teenager.
Right.
And what talking about a work ethic. So I think I heard you right. You said that was a 7-day a week gig because half a day on Saturday, half a day on Sunday. Is that right?
Right. Graduated high school and had plans. That when I graduated, I started at a station in Florence, a rock and roll station, which was really fun, which was a big step up from the little station I was working at in Moulton as far as listeners goes. And worked there for a couple of years. And one day decided, I've always wanted to be a doctor. And I'm having fun, but I need to go be a doctor.
I need to go be.
Yeah.
You talk about from a leadership perspective for just a moment, because you're an incredible leader. But you've told me that you really have never considered yourself that way. It just came to you, or you just were. And you said that realization. When did you realize? You said something happened in your class as a high school.
Yeah, we were talking about that the other day as you had mentioned this podcast to me. I'm not sure what grade it was in, third, fourth, fifth grade, but we had the first time you have class elections, and I got elected president. And I'm thinking, why did that happen? I mean, how did that happen? Well, and I spent a lot of time thinking about that because that happened sort of repeatedly, and I got to thinking about it. And because of the way I grew up, I think it had something to do with it. I think it was in a very unique situation that taught me some leadership skills that hopefully I've improved on, but from an early age. And I was the youngest of 6 kids. I had a sister who was expecting at the same time my mother was with me. And so, and she ended up having 4 children. And I was the oldest of that group by a couple of months.
Of your cousins?
Of my nieces and nephews.
Nieces, that's right. They're your nieces and nephews. So you were the oldest.
So we were frequently together. I mean, that family, very close family, and we stayed close. So I was around them a lot. And so in one sense, I was the youngest in one family.
Right.
And so I got the experience of watching brothers and sisters make mistakes that I did not repeat. And then I got the experience of leading these nieces and nephews who were like siblings to me. They were all I ever knew. So, no, but we never hired babysitters. I mean, if those kids were to be taken care of, the oldest kid in the bunch was responsible. And so that was me. If those kids messed up, then it was up to me to make sure that they didn't. So if they got hurt, why did they get hurt? If I was the instigator, if I instigated those activities that got them hurt or got them in trouble, I probably got a spanking.
Wow.
But if I wasn't, I got a lecture. These children shouldn't do this, they shouldn't do that. And so I didn't like the lecture, and I certainly didn't like the spanking, so I didn't instigate much at all. And so I learned some leadership skills from that and was taught leadership skills from the brothers and sisters.
That's accountability at the core, isn't it? I mean, you were accountable for your nephews and nieces and had to deal with the consequences. And
I learned from that to keep them busy. I learned that at a very early age, keep them busy doing something productive so that when the parents came in, the house wasn't a wreck, the house was whatever, or the yard or wherever we were. And then I would see the children, my nieces and nephews, be rewarded for that good behavior.
That's great.
And that was pretty cool for me because, nobody's getting yelled at. It was a good situation and things moved forward.
So let's move forward. You decided you want to be a doctor, right? What kind of process did you have to go through? Because now you're a DJ, you've graduated high school, I guess, and all of a sudden you decide you want to be a doctor. What did that look like?
Not really all of a sudden. I decided I want to be a doctor when I was probably around 10 or 12 years old. I'd made that decision.
Okay, got it.
And this had been on my mind, and I had any chance I got to look at something medical or study something medical, I always did that.
Oh, that's cool.
So, but I had to get a college education, so I started out in that, and it was up to me to get through college, and I was able to get through college not owing any debt.
Wow.
So that was cool.
Yeah.
But that means I worked through college. So, and also was lucky enough to get scholarships. So the scholarships came, and I was able to pay the bills while working through college. And then after that, I was was lucky enough to get immediately into medical school and got scholarships there too.
Okay, so talk to me about medical school for a minute, because you grew up on a farm, hard work, 7 days a week, doing different things, and now you find yourself, you're through undergrad, you're in medical school. What was the work requirements like in medical school compared to that work ethic on the farm? Did that prepare you for medical school? Did it help you? Did it not? What was it like?
I would have to say yes and no. It prepared me in that there was you had to keep going sometimes when you didn't feel like going.
Right.
Okay, didn't prepare me because medical school was much tougher than working on the farm. It was more day and night.
Okay.
It could
All right.
literally be day and night getting
Wow.
through medical school.
And so you did that, and you were putting yourself through school. Now you're in med school. Got through med school. Where did you begin? What happened after that? Where did you begin your practice? After med school, where'd you go?
Okay, right after med school, well, during med school, actually, the hospital in our neighboring town, Moulton, was in dire straits, and they were about to close. Well, the chairman of the department, I had not planned on going back to Moulton. I planned on being a professor at UAB or something of that
Oh,
nature.
okay.
I loved UAB. I loved Birmingham, and I had found my home. But my chairman of the department, the dean of the medical school, and the administrator of UAB Hospital all came to me and said, "We want you to go to Moulton and complete your residency." How's that going to work? Well, they'd worked all that out where I would spend a week in Moulton and a week in Birmingham, alternating with another physician friend of mine. And so we started that. And so that put me in Moulton, and it was a God thing. It's probably the best thing that ever happened to me.
Wow.
Having my children around my parents and their family the way they were, there's no way that I could reproduce anything like that for my kids. It was great.
When did you know that you were going to go back to Moulton? And for those listening, Moulton is a rural town in North Alabama, Northwest Alabama, I guess.
About 5,000 people.
Yeah, and so it's kind of where you grew up.
Right. I'm practicing in the hospital I was born in.
There you go. And when did you know that you wanted to go back? Walk us through that process of awareness for you to go, hey, I want to build my practice here.
I'm not sure I can answer that question exactly like you've asked it because I didn't want to go back.
Oh,
And
interesting.
I didn't want
Tell
to
us
go
about
back.
it.
My wife was from there and she didn't want to go back.
All right.
We had the big city thing in mind, and we liked that. We liked that sort of lifestyle for us. But I told the good Lord a long time ago, back when I decided I wanted to be a doctor, back when I was about 10 or 12 years old, I'd heard knocking and we opened, asking to be answered. And so I told the Lord that time if he would help me become one of these things that I was having this conversation with him, that I would walk through the door if he opened it. And so that door to Moulton I told you what happened. It was too wide open. I had to go back to Moulton. And so I felt like that was the thing I had to do, and I did it. But I've fallen in love with it, of course. I couldn't imagine being anywhere else.
Well, you've certainly made an impact through the years in your practice. I want you to think about for me, though, now as you look at your life and where you are today, what is a struggle that you have overcome, or that you've said, this was an obstacle, but because we all struggle, all of us have things in our life that we've had to overcome. And sometimes, we look at this successful physician and who is, in the season of his life now where he has incredible influence and those kinds of things. And we think, boy, he's had it easy. He hasn't had to overcome anything. He's just, life has been handed to him on a silver platter. And we all know that's just not true. So help us to know, if you don't mind sharing, struggle and how you overcame that struggle.
Well, very personal. The struggle would be struggling with attention deficit disorder and some depression that hits every now and then. Yeah. And that's a struggle, and you learn how to deal with that and move ahead. And you take the positive parts of that. There are positive parts of that too, and you use those positive parts as well. The impulsivity can be used. I don't know. There's just there can be some good in it, but there is also a struggle. Studying in medical school, I could not get into study group They were too distracting to me.
Oh,
My studying was very solitary. That was a very lonely time.
oh,
Medical
wow.
school was lonely. When I got into clinics, I loved it because I was around people and could take what I'd learned in those first 2 years and start applying it and start problem solving like we did back on the farm, and that was pretty cool. But those first 2 years were very lonely, and it was very, I'm sure, very hard on my wife too. She didn't complain about it, but I remember we put the TV in the trunk of the car because if the TV was on, it would get my attention.
My
And
goodness.
so she went without TV, and she's a very supportive and wonderful lady.
Wow.
So
That's amazing.
so I overcame that. Plus, um, not all decisions turned out exactly like you would hope. There are other variables that play in, and sometimes things don't just happen just like you would like for them to. And so you have some setbacks, and I'm certainly had plenty of those.
Well, it's amazing to me that you're self-aware because there are things that happen in even behaviorally or who we are. You said, "Hey, I have ADD. I've struggled with some depression," and that self-awareness I think is so huge for us as individuals, for us as we lead ourselves, because so many times people are not self-aware. Other people are aware. Others see things in us, but many times, it's difficult for us to look at ourselves honestly and to be self-aware about our struggles, to be self-aware about, hey, I have to be alone. I have to focus alone. I can't study in groups. I have this thing. And so I know that's been difficult for you, but your self-awareness has allowed you to not only become aware of it, but to develop strategies, i.e. put the TV in the trunk so that you could be successful, right?
Right.